Hari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yasoda Nandana Prajajana Ranjana. Yasoda Nandana Prajajana Ranjana. Yamunatira Vanachari. Yamunatira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we are completing this particular chapter of Canto 10, which is the chapter entitled Mother Yasoda binds Lord Krishna, and we'll be continuing on to the new chapter, which is Canto 10, Chapter 10, and that's entitled The Deliverance of the Yamal Arjuna Trees. So we'll be doing several verses culminating in text 2 to 3, which is the verse on the board. So I'm just going to go chronologically from where we left off yesterday. So I'll be just reading text 22, 23, and then the introduction to the next chapter, and text 1 and text 2 to 3. So text 22 of Canto 10, Chapter 9. Krishna's tu kriha krityeshu vyagram matari prabhu adrakshit arjuno purvam guyukau danadatmajao. And the translation for text 22. While Mother Yasoda was very busy with household affairs, the Supreme Lord Krishna observed twin trees known as Yamal Arjuna, which in a former millennium had been the demigod sons of Kuvera. Text 23. Pura Narada Shapena Vrikshatam Prapitao Madat Malakuvara Manikriva Iti Kiatao Shrityan Vitao. So the translation for text 23. In their former birth, these two sons, known as Nalakuvara and Manikriva, were extremely opulent and fortunate, but because of pride and false prestige, they did not care about anyone. and thus Narada Muni cursed them to become trees. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 10th canto, 9th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Mother Yasoda Binds Lord Krishna. And we begin chapter 10, so I'll read the introduction. For the deliverance of the Yamal Arjuna trees. This chapter describes how Krishna broke the twin Arjuna trees, from which Nala Kuvara and Manigriva, the sons of Kuvera, then came out. Nala Kuvara and Manigriva were great devotees of Lord Shiva, but because of material opulence, they became so extravagant and senseless that one day they were enjoying with naked girls in a lake and shamelessly walking here and there. Suddenly Narada Muni passed by, but they were so maddened by their wealth and false prestige that even though they saw Narada Muni present, they remained naked and were not even ashamed. In other words, because of opulence and false prestige, they lost their sense of common decency. Of course, it is in the nature of the material qualities that when one becomes very much opulent in terms of wealth and a prestigious position, one loses one's sense of etiquette and does not care about anyone, even a sage like Narada Muni. For such bewildered persons, ahankara vimudatma, who especially deride devotees, the proper punishment is to be again stricken with poverty. The Vedic rules and regulations prescribe how to control the false sense of prestige by the practice of yama, niyama, and so on. Tapasa, brahmacharyena, samena cha, dhammena cha. A poor man can be convinced very easily that the prestige of an opulent position in this material world is temporary, but a rich man cannot. Therefore, Narada Muni set an example by cursing these two persons, Nala Kuvara and Manigriva, to become dull and unconscious like trees. This was a fit punishment. But because Krishna is always merciful, even though they were punished, they were fortunate enough to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. Therefore, the punishment given by Vaishnavas is not at all punishment. Rather, it is another kind of mercy. By the curse of the Devashi, Nala Kuvara and Manigriva became twin Arjuna trees and remained in the courtyard of Mother Yasoda and Nanda Maharaj, waiting for the opportunity to see Krishna directly. Lord Krishna, by the desire of his devotee, uprooted these Yamal Arjuna trees, and when Nala Kuvara and Manigriva were thus delivered by Krishna after 100 years of the Devas, their old consciousness revived, and they offered Krishna prayers suitable to be offered by demigods. Having thus gotten the opportunity to see Krishna face to face, they understood how merciful Narada Muni was, and therefore they expressed their indebtedness to him and thanked him. Then, after circumambulating the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, they departed for their respective abodes. Text 1. Shri Rajo Vacha Kathyatam Bhagavan Etat Tayo Shapasya Karanam Yatad Vigarhitam Karma Yena Vadevashesh Tamaham. The translation for text 1. King Parikshit inquired from Sukadev Goswami, "O great and powerful saint, what was the cause of Nala Kuvara's and Manigriva's having been cursed by Narada Muni? What did they do that was so abominable that even Narada, the great sage, became angry at them? Kindly describe this to me." And texts 2 and 3. which is the verse on the board, which we can chant responsively, at least text 2. Shri Sukho Vacha Rudrasyam Macharan Bhutva Sudriptau Danadatmajau Kailosa Pavane Ramye Mandakinyam Madod Katau Shri Sukho Vacha Rudrasyanucharano Bhutva Sudriptau Danadatmajau Kailasho Pavane Ramye Mandakinyam Madod Katau Shri Sukho Vacha Rudrasyamacharau Bhutva Sudarpitau Danadatmajau Kailaso Pavane Ramye Manundankinyam Madod Katau. Please chant. Shri Sukho Vacha Rudrasyanacharau Bhutva Sudriptau Danadatmajau Kailaso Pavane Ramye Mandakinyam Madod Katau Shri Sukho Vacha Rudrasyanucharau Bhutva Sudriptau Danadatmajau Kailasyo Pavane Ramye Mandakinyam Madod Katau Shri Sukho Vacha Rudrasyanucharau Bhutva Sudriptau Danadatmajau Kailaso Pavane Ramye Mandakinyam Madod Katau. And I'll read text 3 too. Varunim Mandiram Petva Madaju Nitalochana Strijanar Snugayat Bis Cheratu Pushpite Vanem. And the word for word. Shri Sukho Vacha. Shri Sukadev Goswami replied, Rudasya of Lord Shiva, Anucharau, two great devotees or associates, Bhutva, being elevated in that post, Sudirptau, being proud of their position and their beautiful bodily features, Danadatmajau, the two sons of Kuvera, treasurer of the demigods, Kailash Upavana. In a small garden attached to Kailash. Parvata. The residence of Lord Shiva. Ramye. In a very beautiful place. Mandakinyan. On the river Mandakini. Mada Utkatao. Terribly proud and mad. So I'll stop there because that was the translation for text 2. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gananjana Shlakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utapakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragunatam Vitam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saha Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagat Pate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Ramapada Swami Iti Namine Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So there's a question. Ah yes, I did jump, didn't I? Okay, so translation. Sukadev Goswami said, O King Parikshit, because the two sons of Kuvera had been elevated to the association of Lord Shiva, of which they were very much proud, they were allowed to wander in a garden attached to Kailash Hill on the bank of the Mandakini River. Taking advantage of this, they used to drink a kind of liquor called Varuni. Accompanied by women singing after them, they would wander in that garden of flowers, their eyes always rolling in intoxication. The purport by Srila Prabhupada. This verse mentions some of the material advantages afforded to persons associated with or devoted to Lord Shiva. Apart from Lord Shiva, if one is a devotee of any other demigod, one receives some material advantages. Foolish people, therefore, become devotees of demigods. This has been pointed out and criticized by Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita 7:20. Kamas tais prita jana prapadyante nya devatsaha. Those who are not devotees of Krishna have a taste for women, wine, and so forth, and therefore they have been described as krita jnana, bereft of sense. The Krishna consciousness movement can very easily point out such foolish persons, for they have been indicated in Bhagavad Gita 7:15, where Lord Krishna says, Namam duskritino mudha prapadyantem naradana mayad parita jnana asuram bhavam ashrita. Those miscreants who are grossly foolish, lowest amongst mankind, whose knowledge is stolen by illusion, and who partake of the atheistic nature of demons, do not surrender unto me. Anyone who is not a devotee of Krishna and does not surrender to Krishna must be considered Naradama, the lowest of men, and Duskriti, one who always commits sinful activities. Thus, there is no difficulty in finding out who is a third-class or fourth-class man, for one's position can be understood simply by the crucial test. Is he or is he not a devotee of Krishna? Why are devotees of the demigods greater in number than the Vaishnavas? The answer is given herein. Vaishnavas are not interested in such fourth-class pleasures as wine and woman, nor does Krishna allow them such facilities. So, okay. There's a question that's been asked by King Parikshit of Sukadev Goswami. And this is the question he asks. O great and powerful saint, what was the cause of Nalakuvaras and Manigrivas having been cursed by Narada Muni? What did they do that was so abominable that even Narada, the great sage, became angry at them? And kindly describe this to me. And the verse that we're looking at today is Srila Sukadev Goswami, who begins the description that he was asked to give. And this is how he begins. He says, O King Parikshit, because the two sons of Kuvara had been elevated to the association of Lord Shiva, of which they were very much proud, they were allowed to wander in a garden attached to Kailash Hill on the bank of the Mandakini River. Taking advantage of this, they used to drink a kind of liquor called Varuni. Accompanied by women singing after them, they would wander in that garden of flowers, their eyes always rolling in intoxication. So here's the beginning description in response to Maharaj Parikshit's question, because he wanted to know what was the terrible thing that they had done. And he wanted to know the full description. So Sukadev Goswami begins, and it's interesting because in the purport, Srila Prabhupada approaches this dialogue, because this is the beginning dialogue on these two personalities. And Srila Prabhupada approaches the dialogue by immediately pointing out the advantages that are related to bodily satisfaction that had come the way of Nalakuvara and Manigriva. And here, this is described by Sukadev Goswami, that they had the association of Lord Shiva, and this association extended to them getting a particular privilege, and that privilege was for them to be able to wander in the gardens that were alongside Kailash Hill. And right away, Srila Prabhupada makes a generalization, and he says that if one is, these are his words, if one is a devotee of any other demigod, including Lord Shiva, of course, one receives some material advantage. So it is for this reason that people become devotees of some demigod. This is the reason. Now, this is a statement that also Lord Krishna makes, and when Lord Krishna makes this statement, the same idea that one is going to get some material advantage through the worship of a demigod, Lord Krishna includes, there's some inbuilt criticism. And this is how Lord Krishna puts it. Those whose intelligence has been stolen by material desires surrender unto demigods and follow the particular rules and regulations of worship according to their own nature. So there's inbuilt criticism because that intelligence that has been, that he says some intelligence is gone, and that intelligence that's gone is spiritual intelligence. Because rather than focusing on the highest goal of engaging in transcendental service to the Supreme Lord, the focus is on finding shelter in demigods. in order to obtain immediate fulfillment. So the immediate fulfillment of desires on the part of Nalakuvara and Manigriva was in the form of the association of many women. And here there's a description. The women are described as following them. So they had a whole retinue. And the other particular immediate fulfillment of desire is that they were using an intoxicant called Varuni, a particular drink with some intoxicating properties. So one understands by the external something of the internal desires. So the internal desires had clearly been ones that were connected to having a great deal of sensual enjoyment. So there's the Sanskrit, kamais tais tair hritagana prapadyante nya devatai. So the translation is they were deprived of knowledge. So deprived of knowledge, they surrendered to demigods. So this is the category of persons that want the fulfillment of particular material desires, and they want it immediately. So the understanding is that actually proper knowledge isn't there when one is looking for immediate gratification. And I mean, I'm just going to say something that comes to mind right away. Like, we live in a culture where there's immediate gratification, so immediate fulfillment of desires. So hence there's thousands of products that are manufactured that all hold the promise, and some fulfill it, I suppose, of providing immediate, I guess, fulfillment. So there's toothpaste that will make one's teeth white and sparkling. There's shampoos that are going to give one voluminous hair. There are carbonated waters that are going to give one a burst of energy. Anyway, so on. Many different things that give immediate fulfillment, but everything comes at a certain cost. So all this excessive manufacturing of products means there's like emission into the atmosphere from the factories of different pollutants. And the interesting thing is, because the immediate fulfillment is there, like, intelligence isn't used, so there's consequence. So the consequence is that on another continent, there's actually drought. So all this manufacturing that goes on means that, like, for instance, I've read that it's the continent of Africa that ends up suffering. So in Africa, all the droughts happen, and, you know, crops fail because of drought, so there's starvation, all because of the incredible emissions that happen in our part of the world. So there's just a sort of comparison to highlight this point, how the emphasis on immediate fulfillment takes away proper intelligence and proper knowledge, although of course the proper intelligence and knowledge that's been spoken about here is spiritual intelligence, so it's even deeper. So just taking to some amelioration of difficulty and wanting some immediate fulfillment on the part of persons with some material desires, where there's piety, there's worship of demigods, but it means that intelligence is gone because the proper goal has been forgotten, that one needs to worship the source of everything, the Supreme Lord. So this is the setting that we find for Manigriva Nalakuvara. It's a setting where they're going to perform some action which we haven't heard about yet, although there was some touching upon it in the introduction to the chapter. And Maharaj Parikshit is having this curiosity of particularly wanting to hear about, or a description that leads to an understanding of what action they performed that brought about such a horrific result for them that they actually were placed into the body of trees. So presently in the narration, we hear that Lord Krishna observes these twin Arjuna trees, he knows that in a former millennium, so 100 celestial years earlier, they had actually been demigod sons of Kuvera. So this is given in text 22, the first text we read. So by looking at them, Krishna understands. And also, we know that there was some degraded action that had to have been performed by Nalakuvara and Manigriva for them to incur the wrath of Narada Muni and for them to get cursed to take on this form as trees. So presently, just how far we've got, we understand that they wanted intense sensual enjoyment. So if we take all the things, I mean, I was talking about just manufacturing, but persons can actually take individual steps to fulfill their desire for sensual enjoyment. So that was the case with Manigriva and Nalakuvara. And this is something that Srila Prabhupada examines, because he says that those who are outwardly performing devotional, he makes a comparison. So it's not the position of Nalakuvara and Manigriva necessarily, and I'll get into a discussion of that, but Srila Prabhupada makes a comparison of their position with persons who outwardly they're performing devotional service, but inwardly they are cheating, means that they continue to commit sinful activity. And the effect or the result for those persons is comparable, because they come to take on, this is Srila Prabhupada, they come to take on, so there's no curse involved, but they come to automatically take on the body of a dog or a hog. And but because of the fact that externally they were performing devotional activities, that body that they take on comes to be in a sacred place such as Vrindavan. So so this is that, where there's that discrepancy between externally appearing to worship the Supreme Lord, but inwardly continuing sinful activity. So there's the reaction that comes to the sinful activity, like for Manigriva and Nalakuvara, but by the touch of the dust of Vrindavan, they've been freed from sinful activity. So they're imprisoned in their bodies as trees. The desires are carried in the subtle body, but because they're touching the dust of Vrindavan for 100 celestial years, they're getting freed from that desire for sinful activity. So, and this is presumably because of the comparison of Srila Prabhupada, the same thing that happens, like in Vrindavan, visiting the last time, I was actually struck, because I hadn't been for 15 years, and I was struck by the, quadrupled population of monkeys, the quadrupled population of dogs. And I didn't see so many hogs, although they were there. In fact, maybe the hogs were more before, because now the sewers had got closed, and that was their main, I guess, sustenance area. So then, I mean, one could say that there's been an increase in the number of individuals that have been doing outwardly devotional service, but inwardly cheating, just by the presence of so many creatures in Vrindavan. So, Nalakuvara and Managriva, they in fact fall into one of 4 categories of persons who worship Lord Krishna. So these are the categories. There's the category of the sufferer, there's the category of the inquirer, there's the category of the enjoyer, and the Gyani means one who's interested in spiritual knowledge or knowledge in general. And of course, the category of Nalakuvara and Managriva is that of the enjoyer. And Bhagavad Gita 7:16 describes this. And I use this translation from Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur because it's very simplified. 4 types of religious persons worship me, O Arjuna: the sufferer, the inquirer, enjoyer, and the Gyani. So this is Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's translation of that verse, just puts it very simply. So now, all 4 types of persons, they qualify for bhakti, wherein bhakti is the principal component. So this category of bhakti is called pradhana bhakti. So they have the qualification because they're worshipping Lord Krishna, but with all this kind of overriding focus, either their enjoyment, either their suffering, or their inquiring. So all of them have the qualification to move forward in their bhakti such that their bhakti becomes the predominating focus. They have that qualification just by the fact that they're taking to bhakti. So distressed persons, just because they're performing some bhakti but with focus on their distress. Persons who are have the desire for wealth, they're performing their bhakti but their real desire is for wealth. Persons who are inquiring but their real interest is other inquiries. But they're in a positive position still. Their bhakti is termed karma mishra bhakti. So, and in the case of a Gyani, somebody who's interested in spiritual knowledge, that's called Jnana Mishra Bhakti. So it means it's bhakti, but it's mixed with, the other interests. There is, however, in this talking about like bhakti being mixed in this kind of way, either with enjoyment or an inquiring something or a distressed something, there is also yoga mishra bhakti. So it means that bhakti can be mixed with yoga, means there's a detachment actually from material things. So it means that the doors of sensual enjoyment are actually being closed off. But still it's mixed, that bhakti. And Lord Krishna describes this in Bhagavad Gita 8:12, where he says, the senses used for acquiring knowledge, meaning the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, touch, these are fully controlled and not allowed to engage in self-gratification. And instead, the mind is focused on the super soul in the heart. and the life force is raised to the top of the head. So there are yogis who are practicing in this way. They're shutting off their senses. They're not allowing those senses to function so that they're gratifying themselves. And they're even pushing their life air to the top of the head. So they're extremely controlled. So it's a form of bhakti, but it's mixed, because the focus isn't exclusively on the Supreme Lord. They're trying to focus inwardly, get to the super soul in the heart. So this is how their practice works: restraining the senses, pushing the life air to the top of the head. And Krishna describes this. He says, the yogic situation is that of detachment from all sensual engagements, closing all the doors of the senses and fixing the mind on the heart and the life air at the top of the head. One establishes himself in yoga. So this falls into the category called Devala Bhakti Yoga. So a different category from the persons that are going with all their material things, but some bhakti. And I'll read the 2 lines of that Bhagavad Gita verse: Anyanya Chetas Satatam Yomam Smarati Nityasa. Now, we've looked at this mixed kind of approach to bhakti, or bhakti with the mixture. Then there's also a description of pure bhakti yoga. So in that case, the devotee wants nothing except Krishna. And this particular mention of bhakti yoga is opposed to the mention of the bhaktas who desire some material gain. For example, there's karmi yogis, the jnani yogis, the hatha yogis, who all just have some bhakti added. Now, there's a third category in which bhakti is subsidiary. In fact, in this particular category, because of the predominance of this karma, jnana, or yoga, so whether it's the yoga with the focus on the super soul, or the karma wanting to get enjoyment, or the jnana wanting to get some knowledge, this category, they actually are opposed to bhakti. So all those material elements are there, but it's not called bhakti, what they're doing. Because these persons, they want results for their actions. So they're not actually connecting to bhakti. They're performing their yoga, but they want some result for it. So the results are this way. And this was a little complex, and I don't feel on top of the subject matter, but this is how Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains it. So I'm going to say it, and hopefully I get some understanding through saying it. I was quite anxious about this, but here goes. So the results are like this. For those that are practicing sakarma karma, it is swarga. So it means that, anyway, let me just read and then I'll comment. For sakarma karma, it is swarga, meaning the heavenly planets. The result for nishkarma karma is jnana yoga. And the result of jnana and ashtanga yoga is nirvana, or moksha, impersonal liberation. This is Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So these are yogis. They're practicing yoga, but it's not connected to bhakti. So even ones who have no desire, so these are the nishkarma karma yogis, their progression is going to be that they're going to come to jnana yoga. It means that they're going to get interested in spiritual knowledge. So I don't know if I'm stepping out of my comfort zone here, but like we have, because there's a particular person who's come from the yogic tradition to our temple, that person is obviously taking this step because this person is interested in including bhakti now in the yoga professional business he runs. So he's been very fervently pursuing that the bhakti yogis come to the regular yoga establishment and add that component. But that is still, in his case, where the progression to jnana or wanting knowledge has taken him isn't on an impersonal level. It's taken him to bhakti. So that's very fortunate. But generally, the progression from just not having any desires, but one progresses to wanting some spiritual knowledge in yoga. And the result of jnana, so somebody who's practicing yoga where they're interested in spiritual knowledge, and Ashtanga yoga, they're controlling their breath, their posture, their progression is coming to impersonal liberation. So there's progression, but bhakti is not involved. Now, if we go back to the two kinds of mixed bhakti that are there, so these Karma Mishra Bhakti category and the Pradhana Bhuta Bhakti category, they come to have attainment of their respective desires. So there is deliverance from suffering. There is attainment of scriptural knowledge. There is gain of material benefits. And after that, because of the fact that within their particular practice, there was some superior nature, meaning that they still had some focus on the Supreme Lord, then they actually do come, the result for them is that they do come to have liberation. And that liberation is called Salokya, means that they come to go to a planet where they can even have the same form as the Lord. And what's predominant there is that there's a sense of happiness and power. And in fact, they also don't experience any fall down. So it means that they actually don't exhaust the enjoyment they get. So just because in their practice there was some bhakti, with all this other, the distress, the desire for enjoyment, the interest in knowledge, those persons, just because they had some bhakti there, they do, the end result for them is liberation. And it doesn't, and they have happiness and enjoyment, and they don't fall down just because there was some bhakti there. So this is of course different from cases where enjoyment is exhausted, such as persons who go to the heavenly planets as a result of karma. So that's quite different. So just because the other persons included the bhakti component, when they actually get liberation, it's not that they fall down. So interesting. You can see the incredible benefit just from including a little bit of bhakti. Now, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti writes, sometimes those that have Karma Mishra Bhakti, so, again, the mixed bhakti with all the material things, or even if they have jnana, so still in the mixed category, but interested in spiritual knowledge, they attain prema. So they can actually come to the point of loving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the other higher rasas, meaning the parental or the conjugal flavor in their worship of the Supreme Lord. So it is possible, because of the influence of an associate of the Supreme Lord in their previous life. So that's the component that can change everything for them. But their prema, or their love for the Supreme Lord, there's a particular mood, because they started out with this position of everything being so mixed. A devotee influences them. They do come to the point of loving the Supreme Lord, but it's always in a mood of reverence. So this is how that progression works. The reverence stays. So this is Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. This is how he analyzes it. So in our situation where we've just read this, not our situation, but the point we've come to in the story, we read that here in Vrindavan, Krishna is seeing two trees that are connected at the root. And Srila Kavi Karnapurna in Ananda Vrindavan Champu, he gives a simile. He says, just as Karma Kanda and Jnana Kanda are separate paths, so the two trees had separate trunks. So he's analyzing it even on a deeper level. That the path of following, the material desires one has, and the path of following spiritual material desires is still a little different. And he says that just seeing that the two trees, even though they were attached to the roots, the fact that they had two separate trunks indicates that the two paths are different. And he continues with another simile. He says, as the Sama and Yajur Vedas have various divisions, so the two trees had many branches. So they're not being seen as ordinary trees. It's great personalities are understanding the implications, even from how they're presenting something of the deeper significance in terms of Vedic teachings. So he gives another simile. He says, as a mountain range possesses steadiness, and as a cluster of clouds is broken by showers, similarly, these two trees had many branches. And he carries on, as a king has the qualities of valor and achievement. So these trees were seen as like quite magnificent. The comparison is a king who has valor and achievement. So that's how magnificent these trees were. And they were standing very stoutly. So they were seen as possessing steadiness. So interesting how they've been seen. So what it actually comes to is that the two demigods in the trees, they had become purified by suffering for so many years. And another simile is there. Just as clouds abound in the rainy season, and as water becomes clean and pure in autumn, those trees stood stout and strong. So they were getting purified by the dust of Vrindavan. So this was where the beginning had been, that the devotional service is mixed because of that, wanting sensual enjoyment, but the fact that their roots were touching the dust of Vrindavan for 100 celestial years, they'd actually got freed of that desire for sensual enjoyment. So in fact, they're being compared to water that has become clean and pure, like it happens in autumn. I'm not so in touch with nature, that I'm aware of the condition of water in the different seasons, unfortunately, but this is a comparison that's made. And in fact, because of that purity from their touching the dust of Vrindavan, meaning gone was that desire for sensual enjoyment, they even began to remind everybody of the great heroes Arjuna and Kartavirya. So, so powerful were these trees at this moment. So Krishna, he decided when he looked at them, just all these similes and how they were presenting stout and strong and pure, he decided to bestow his mercy upon them. So he began to drag his mortar tied to his belly along the ground. So he's dragging himself towards the trees, and his playmates are cheerfully following him. And they don't know what's coming, because they think that Krishna wants to take shelter under the shade of the trees. This is given in Ananda Vrindavan Champu. So, just as the persons who are practicing Kama Mishra Bhakti, meaning, you know, that's Bhakti with the mixture, attain Prema, they attain Prema in servitude and the higher rasas on their own because of the influence of a devotee in their previous life. So here we see that the attainment of Managriva Nalakuvara was, and it'll come, they also come to a point of attaining Prema or love for Krishna. When we will come to read that, but it's predominated by a mood of reverence. So I've tried to give something of the background to what we're seeing just at this moment. Yeah, if there's any thought on this subject matter, and I'm not super expert in the subject matter, but this verse came my way, so if there's any thought.
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you for your class. One funny point, your last comment, you were like, I'm not super expert at this subject matter. Well, I could speak for myself. I would definitely say, and I'm sure other people could relate to you, maybe not you, but we're all definitely expert at this subject matter of lust, overwhelming sense gratification. So I would say we're kind of Paramahamsas in that regard. But you made many nice points, and there's so many. I like this pastime. There's so many. Hold on, let me turn. Can you turn the? Was the? Yeah, too that much. Hold on a second. I think Subha said number 2. Hare Krishna. Sorry about that. There's many points in this pastime, and a few points that came to mind. Well, your main point, I'll probably get to that later, I'll comment, and I have a question after that, but your point you were mentioning is that performing devotional service externally, but internally performing commotional service, as Jitendra would usually say. But one point, some points I appreciate about this pastime, maybe you could expand on some of these points, and one question I have afterwards is that unlike the sons of Kuvera, we see that Srila Prabhupada was devoted to his magnetism, or attracting people for the right reasons. The sons of Kuvera were devoted to their egotism, or attracting people for the wrong reason, because they had a lot of money. So if they didn't have any money, they were enjoying the Ganges River with these beautiful women. But if they told the women, my net worth is $10, see you later. And also in this past, I really appreciate it because it basically, some points we may not consider a lot to keep us humble is that in this particular purport, Prabhupada mentions that Nalakuvana and Manigriva were associated with Lord Shiva. They got some benediction somehow or other. And there's one pastime related to this where in the 10th canto, chapter 88, where one demon named Virkasura worshiped Lord Shiva. He was a devout Shiva Bhakta. He was trying to summon Shiva to ask Shiva for a benediction, but Shiva wouldn't appear, so he started performing so many difficult austerities. It ended up with him cutting his skin off, cutting one skin after another. And then finally Lord Shiva didn't appear, so he was about to commit suicide but cutting his head off. And then Lord Shiva appeared and was like, please, okay, I'm here, you don't have to commit suicide. Then Lord Shiva, he healed the demon completely. He was healed of all his wounds. And then after Lord Shiva mercifully healed the demon of all of his wounds, then Shiva says, what can I do for you? You have such Shiva Bhakti. And the demon says, I want a benediction where anyone's head I touch, it will explode. And Shiva's like, darn, I shouldn't have asked that. But anyways, I'll give you the benediction. And so then the demon, he wanted to first touch Lord Shiva's head. Why? So he could take Lord Shiva's wife, Parvati, because she was looking good, I guess. And the reason I appreciate this pastime is because Shiva, he could have been proud. Oh my God, Vrikasura, he has so much Shiva Bhakti. Actually, Vrikasura had Vrikasura Bhakti. He didn't have Shiva Bhakti. So we see in the material world, people may be proud. Jama Aishra Shruta Shribir. I have so many followers. I have so much beauty. I have so much money, so much education. Actually, in the material world, we see that people who have those things, they have not one follower like Lord Shiva. Everyone's a follower of themselves. They're a follower of the opulence, not of you. And that's why we could appreciate the pastimes, saints like Prabhupada, because that's how he was able to attract others with his magnetism, his Krishna consciousness. And but there's so many points to mention, but going to the point you were mentioning that outwardly performing devotional service, but inwardly empty inside. Well, there's one story, Christmas stories, where it's basically described that once upon a time, one mother wanted to teach her son a lesson of gratitude. Because every year during Christmas, he would be grateful for some gifts and ungrateful for others. One year he got a video game, and he was grateful. And somebody else, during that same year, somebody gave him a book, and he threw it aside in disgust. So she tried to do something different this year. So this particular year of 2018 Christmas, she did something which was very surprising. She bought her son more presents than ever, approximately 100 presents. So the child was so excited. He couldn't wait. So during Christmas Eve, he wanted to open the presents immediately. But then the mother said, my dear child, be patient, sweet pea. First thing Christmas morning, you can open your presents. So then he was restless the whole night, couldn't sleep. And finally Christmas morning arrived. She says, my dear sweet pea, you can open your Christmas presents. So then he abruptly opened them as fast as possible. He opened one present. He was shocked. Opened another present, shot. The third present, shot. 100 presents later, he was completely shocked because not one present had a gift inside of it. And basically the moral of the story is that just as we're all initially attracted to a nicely gift-wrapped package, but are repulsed by it if we find out there's no gift inside. So also we see that people are initially attracted to people who are wrapped in beauty, fame, education, but we're repulsed by them when we find out there's no humility inside, no appreciation, no forgiveness, and no gratitude. And we see that the material modes attract people together, but spiritual codes keep people together. And so in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna actually asked these questions to Krishna in chapter 14 regarding the modes of material nature. That's what the chapter is entitled, the 3 modes of material nature, I believe. So in this chapter, I believe chapter 14, verse 22 and 25, Arjuna asked Krishna, how is it possible for one to transcend these outward packages, these modes of material natures? And Lord Krishna says, Mamcha yo avyapichanena bhakti yogena sevate saguna samatitaita brahma bhuyaya kalpate. He says, essentially, unless we give ourselves the gift of Krishna consciousness, then we'll always remain empty with material consciousness, always empty with pride, envy, and gratitude. So if I had to ask a question, my question is regarding one famous story, maybe you could expand on it. It's a really ghetto story, but I'm not sure if you heard of the actress Angelina Jolie. Jolie is married to Brad Pitt. They're considered the Hollywood couple. So they divorced, and the reason they divorced is because Brad Pitt had an affair on Angelina Jolie with another actress on a movie set, or because they met on a movie set. And she was furious they got a divorce. She essentially told Brad Pitt, "You have no gift inside in you, no love, you only have lust." But the reason Angelina got Brad Pitt is because Brad Pitt was originally married to another woman named Jennifer Aniston. And Angelina Jolie had an affair with Brad Pitt to get Brad Pitt. So she's criticizing Brad Pitt for what she does. So my question is that sometimes we criticize other people, other devotees. Oh, you don't have the gift of Krishna consciousness inside your heart. What difference does it make if we have the gift of Krishna? So if we have the gift of Krishna consciousness inside our heart? So what are some steps we can move forward to give up this fault finding and hypocrisy, always seeing others' faults and not seeing our own, like this particular case? So what are some steps we can do to gain that realization or have the proper vision?
Yeah, I think it's very difficult to see within the heart of someone. It's extremely difficult. So usually if one's criticizing, it means that one's actually pointing a finger at oneself, because it's just one's finding some external representation of what's bothering one internally about oneself. So if one looks at something critical that comes in the mind, then one can actually try very hard to say, oh, this is emerging because I'm unhappy with this aspect of myself. Perhaps I don't have adequate Krishna consciousness in my estimation. But then there's always the encouragement that, it's very hard to quantify Krishna consciousness. It's more, I guess, an overriding focus that is the important part. So if one focus continues to remain that I'm going to do my utmost to worship the Supreme Personality of God, there's no need to quantify it. It's just that the focus is there. So the difficulties come where one questions one's Krishna consciousness. Well, one doesn't have to question the focus, and that's the important part. One can just actually question one's capacity for being able to handle a difficult situation where one's higher nature may not be coming to the fore. And if that's the case, then always the best thing is to take the position of a humble position of, I have a great deal to learn in terms of changing my behavior, or I have a great deal to learn in terms of interacting with others, and just having that mood that, one has, because one's reshaping one's whole identity by practicing Krishna consciousness. So one's already coming with certain ideas of oneself, one's coming with a predominant focus, what one wants. I mean, that's inbuilt. So one may be wanting wealth, or one may be wanting some sensual enjoyment, because that's already how one's focus has been. So when one is practicing Krishna consciousness, that focus will emerge. And then how one deals with it has to do just with always remembering that one wishes to keep the main focus there. So it's not that if one finds that one's getting pulled by those desires, how one's built, one's psychophysical nature, then a lot of it has to do with the devotees one comes in contact with. It's not everybody that one can speak one's mind to, but to that person that one can speak one's mind to, that is actually extremely helpful for readjusting oneself and remembering what one's focus is. So as long as one doesn't lose the main focus. But the other part, one should take it as it's just a natural part of Krishna consciousness, because one is reshaping one's whole identity. It's a reshaping, and it's challenging. I mean, there's going to be pain involved in giving up some ideas. I mean, you know, you were just giving an example of, you know, somebody attached to the possible enjoyment of 100 gifts. You know, that's inbuilt, whatever one's particular avenue is. For some, it may be wanting that material enjoyment. For somebody else, it may be, you know, reading many philosophical books. It may actually be a form of enjoyment. So, you know, but if the focus remains that I sincerely want to worship the Supreme Lord, that is actually the goal of my life, then sharing one's mind with a devotee is extremely helpful for at least keeping the focus there. The internal work one has to do oneself of, okay, I have that desire for those 100 gifts. This is true. I would really like those 100 gifts. But I know that the goal of my life is worshiping the Supreme Lord, so I'm going to do something that, you know, is in line with that. So I acknowledge I want 100 gifts, but maybe I'll be happy with one. Okay, I understand that. So it'll be a little bit hard to wrench it from my heart, the other 99 enjoyments that I was anticipating, but I will accept one, you know, something that's necessary for well-being, because that is how I'm built. I need that material enjoyment, but you decrease it. You make it manageable, not so extreme like the mind wants it. Just something manageable that's still sane, and you keep the focus. So anyway, that's just a thought.
Thank you so much. That was a good point. I want to, in appreciation of the last point, maybe you don't have to explain so much, since you know people are probably fried at me that shut up. But I really appreciated your point. You said gifts are essentially relative. Some child may be happy for a video game, but an adult may be happy for a nice intellectual philosophical book. And but we see that if somebody doesn't know somebody's particular taste, like suppose somebody's very intellectual, they have so many degrees philosophical, so they'll love a book on Socrates, but we may not particularly know that they're actually into that stuff. So sometimes this happens. There's many scenarios. This is hypothetical, but these scenarios happen. Sometimes a person gives a person a particular gift. Suppose you give an intellectual a video game, and he might be condescending with that. What is this? Do you know who I am? I have a PhD. Why are you giving me a video game? You know, this. So he may become ungrateful. In a child, if you give a child a book, he may also become ungrateful, but the same point is in gratitude. You know, we hear the phrase, it's not the gift that counts, but the thought that counts. So, I mean, you essentially answered the question, but how can we, you know, like Krishna, it says that Krishna is grateful for anything. He has everything, but whatever any devotee does for him, he considers a big deal. So how do we consider, people may not know our particular place, but how can we consider just associating with devotees a big deal? Yeah, we say it's a big deal. Yeah, he's a big pain. Yeah, it's a big deal. You know, get this person out of it is a big pain. But how do we see in a big deal that this is actually a great deal, a fortunate deal? Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Shashakoi, Lava Matra, Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Siddhi Hoy. It's rare to associate with devotees. Brahman, there's so many verses. To associate with devotees is rare. So how do we see that as a big deal? See devotees as a big deal and not a big pain.
Well, I mean, even hearing how it's possible with all one's nature, you know, whether it's a nature that's, you know, predominantly greedy for sensual enjoyment, a nature that's predominantly distressed whether it's a nature that's, you know, predominantly interested in intellectual pursuits, that nature, just because of having some bhakti in it and having the association of devotees, is what's in the future going to catapult one to a position of actually prema, or pure love for the Supreme Lord. So you can't underestimate the association of a devotee, even one. So the inability to see the greatness of a devotee, well, that's natural, because there's one's nature. That's usually what one's dealing with. So one's so busy wrestling with oneself and fulfilling the demands of the mind, or fighting with the demands of the mind, that, you know, it's difficult to even focus on somebody else. So, but it can be done if one spends a little bit of time reflecting. Because when one reflects, then one actually sees the magnanimity of devotees. Now, when you see the magnanimity of devotees, it softens the heart. And when the heart gets softened, that means some material desires have got killed. So, because it's so valuable, that having experienced something of the magnanimity of devotees. So, reflection, just reflecting on that kindness. And you get glimpses of it all the time. I mean, a devotee presents as another person with their psychophysical makeup and their particular difficulties or whatever. And sometimes in interactions, the natures may collide. But taking some step back in private time and reflecting, that magnanimity will be very visible. So that is the thing that strengthens one's own focus on the Supreme Lord, and also allows one to continue even if it seems like there's a clash of natures with the devotee. So, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
The Lord.